These damned cops had put ideas into Kayana's poor wounded head. Ideas about her having stayed with Brandy in the house, and what a load of crap that was. Kelly was glad to be rid of these dudes. First it was Yul Brynner, and now a captor. Terrific. Her little girl was crazy. Kelly worried herself thinking about Kayana, but in the days that followed, a change came over her. Kayana was sick for about a week, and off and on she would have that slight nosebleed. Her vital signs were stable, though, and Dr. Drewsbury found no reason to make a follow-up house call, what with the information Kelly was giving him by phone. In fact, he cleared her 5 days after the incident to go on and fly back to Ohio if she wanted to go. Kayana was doing very well, and she said that by Monday she would go home again. She said she felt well enough to travel, and she walked outside a lot during those days, spending time out in Don's barn, watching him work on his projects, and even learning how to ride an ATV motorcycle around the yard. Kelly was glad to see Kayana and Don getting along so well, after all the trouble they had had between them. They might yet grow to like each other and be a family. It was Sunday morning when it all hit the fan. Kayana had been secretive up until then. Kelly would later admit this. She had seen a change in Kayana, but that look had been gone, that wild look, and Kelly was so happy with that she hadn't noticed much of anything else. Kelly had failed to notice the quiet calm Kayana had developed, an eerie, awesome calm that seemed to make her breathe very slowly and deliberately when she would speak to anyone. Kayana had been thinking about something, and she wasn't telling anyone what it was. Kayana continued to do well, and she even took a short walk the Saturday afternoon before Sunday. But the next morning, Kayana Erbichem was not in her bed asleep, like she should have been. Kayana was not in the house anywhere at all. "Kayana," called Kelly that Sunday morning as she opened the girl's bedroom. "Kayana, where are you?" The bed had been slept in, but Kelly had tucked her in the night before, so she knew that. A chill went through her as she looked in the closet, under the bed, and even out the window, to see if any sign of her could be seen anywhere. "Kelly, have you seen my pistol?" Don was asking, holding a shoebox full of his Hoppy's gun-cleaning supplies. He and Dr. Drewsbury were going to go shoot targets that afternoon, and he wanted his gun. It wasn't in his drawer where he had left it. "I can't even find my daughter," complained Kelly, walking brusquely by him. "I wonder if she's out in the barn." She stared at the second-story window down at the garage-barn combination, and she was shocked to see the door open. Then she was shocked to see that there were ATV tracks in the snow and muck, fresh ones. Kayana. "Go and see if your all-terrain is still out there," said Kelly, trying to be as calm as she could. Don was standing behind her when she said it. He had dropped his box, spilling out yellow rags and rammers and bottles of solvent onto the brown carpet. He had run downstairs out the side door and across the yard to the barn. Kelly watched him from the high window as he disappeared into the barn. He returned a minute later, looking everywhere. Kayana had taken the ATV and was gone with it. "Oh, no," said Kelly to herself, turning away from the window. "What in the world is that girl up to now?" The gun was missing, the bike was missing, Kayana was missing. That meant only one thing: trouble. Kayana was going after something or someone, and Kelly had an awful feeling it had to do with Brandy Ann Manson. The police might have been right. Shivering with fear, Kelly went over to the bedside phone, picked it up, and dialed a number Detective Reginalds had left her before he and Frazier had left with their video cameras and taping equipment. Kelly held the receiver to her ear and waited. "Please, God," she prayed, "don't let me have been too late or too stupid to help my little girl." The snow lay in great clumps all around the hillsides, but most of it was melted down to inches all over the open fields. There were barbed wire fences to negotiate, but they all had gates for trucks to get through, and Kayana used all of these to great advantage. Apparently all these farms could be interconnected, and at one time they might have all been one farm. But Kayina didn't care about any of that right now. It had been hard to wait for today, hard to smile at Mama and Don, hard to act as if she would go home tomorrow as sanely as she was, knowing no more than she did about what had happened to her. Mama was taking this way too calmly for Kayina's sake, but that was not helping Kayina. Not until the rest of it had come back to her in the middle of the night. Not until then did Kayina realize what she had to do. She remembered the trailer at last. She remembered that there had been two trailers. The first one, the empty one, she had just passed a few minutes ago. The farmhouse was up ahead about 5 minutes away, but Kayina wasn't going there. Sure, she had recalled the cave in the captor's basement, and all, but Brandy wouldn't be there. Brandy would be with him in the second trailer. The captor, as Yule, had suggested to her mind that he lived in the first old trailer. The second one was up in the hills a bit farther away from the road. The second trailer was hidden in pine trees. What angered Kayina was that she had known this all along, but somehow he had had the ability to make her forget, make her think whatever he wanted her to think. Any woman would have been furious, but Kayina, that made her homicidal. It made her so full of rage that a man had gotten into her mind, that she would do anything now to try and save Brandy. Anything. She touched her jacket pocket and smiled. In her pocket she had Don's .357 Ruger. It was small and nicely concealed. It was a short-handled gun with a big pop, as Don had described it to Drewsbury over the phone. Terrific, Kayina had thought. Just what I need. The gun was a perfect fit for her thick little hand. It was already loaded with 6 bullets, and while she didn't have any idea how to open the cylinder, she would not need to. She was going to give him 6 rounds, and she knew that all you had to do was pull the trigger. On a revolver, no safety to fool with, and no magazines to chamber. These terms were alien to Kayina, but having heard Don speak of them, she was mighty glad she didn't have to do any of those things. They sounded difficult. She got over the next hill, and there, above her line of sight, was the second trailer. Crafty little bastard, using 2 trailers, and heaven only knew what sort of David Copperfield nonsense to make her think she'd been living a wet dream fantasy with Yul Brynner's stunt double. She got within sight of the place, and she killed that awful-sounding motor on Don's ATV. She understood how this thing worked perfectly, and she killed the engine without a flutter. Now if he's heard me, she thought, he'll be waiting for me. I will outthink him this time. I will let him come to me. She sat, straddling that big .250 ATV like a motor cop working a beachside zone, and she pulled out her gun and waited. Somewhere up there, about 100 yards into those pines, he had Brandy Manson in a trailer. Kayina rubbed her chin and plotted. The thing I cannot do, she reminded herself, is look into his eyes. I must not do that. I must not. He is Medusa. Kayina waited for 15 minutes and got off her bike. Rubbing her buns to get the circulation going again, she stomped her feet a few times to get the cold in her toes to subside. She started up the hill. She went slowly to avoid the possibility of winding herself. She didn't need to be like the joke about the jogger in the city park running with the big dog. By the time the mugger gets her, that dog is so winded he holds up a paw and says, "Take her, man, she's yours." Kayina didn't want to have to say that with Brandy. Kayina bit her lip, wondering what the little starlet must be going through now. Here she had almost been rescued, and then to have had her hopes so smashed like a ceramic doll against a sidewalk. Kayina didn't know exactly how she would find her friend Brandy, but recalling a time when she'd been afraid to even open the locked door to the room in which Brandy had lived, Kayina felt shame cross her face. That shame was now the key ingredient in Kayina's resolve to rescue Brandy. When all of Kayina's shame and guilt had finally fermented in her head, the resulting percentage of self-induced bravery and determination was about 200 proof. Kayina was ready to go and get her friend, now, because she had so identified with Brandy. A man walks into their planned escape from the house, seconds before it happens, and scrambles Kayina's brains for her. That was a most unsettling feeling. Kayana's nose bled every day now, but she didn't tell her mother. It wasn't a drug, Kayana didn't think. It was a combination of the dope he'd made her take and his witchcraft hypnotism. Kayana recalled being hypnotized before, as a little kid at the fair, but damn, it had been nothing like this. Compared to that episode of fun at the fair, this was like comparing a nightmare to full-blown schizophrenia. There was no comparison. Kayana had finally wakened out of her dream of the day, thank God. It had happened gradually, but now she thought it was all explained for her. After lying in bed, bleeding, and trying to remember all of the captor's words and places they had visited while she was under, Kayana finally did dredge up this second trailer. Lying there in bed, bleeding from her nose, she had visualized it and realized that it was a real place. An hour later, she had known where it was. That was when she had planned to do this. That was what she had planned for this day and what she would do to get here. She had asked Don to show her how the ATV worked, and unwittingly he had done so. She had asked to see his gun collection, and he had done that. She had played up to him for about 3 days and has his complete confidence. Men were so stupid. Now to get this man and to play on his stupidity, the daughter of Kelly Erbicum walked up the hill and stood just out of sight behind the trees, just like she'd seen them do on television, just out of sight of the windows. She saw that there was a back wall of this trailer that had a great oil tank obscuring the back window panes. She had it in mind to go that way and hide there. She started for it, seeing only the tank ahead of her. She walked slowly, quietly, and was doing quite well. Kayana didn't see the shadow appear behind her as she went across the open space of dirt to the trailer itself. She paused behind the dirty glass, intending to peek in. "Hey, little lady," hollered Yule from over in the trees. Kayana closed her eyes and bit her lip. "Think," she told herself. "Think." She turned around slowly. There stood Yule. He had a girl standing beside him. It was Brandy. She was in handcuffs and her face was bruised. She was dressed in her proper clothes and she looked awful. She didn't look at Kayana straight on. She stared at the ground in front of her. He had obviously beaten her up in the past few days. "I found her, Kayana," hollered Yule, and for a moment Kayana smiled. There was her old friend Yule, and he had found Brandy. "Where did you find her, Yule?" asked Kayana, tears streaming down her face, as he walked towards her. He had left Brandy standing over by the trees, and Kayana noticed she didn't move. She did not try to escape the man who looked like Yul Brynner. "I found her right inside there," she was told as he got closer. There was his familiar rawhide smell that Kayana grooved on so much, and there was his old face, lit with the sun as it peeked out from behind the trees above his head. The sun wreathed his face in light, and for a moment he looked like an angel of light. He looked as harmless as an old retiree walking with his daughter down on the beach. "He's hurt her," Yule was saying, as he drew closer, even closer yet. "But he won't hurt her no more, I promise you that much." Yule whipped out a large handgun and flashed it in the sunlight. It was black and wicked looking. He smiled as he lowered it in front of him. Kayana stood there, her hands in her pockets, waiting for him to approach. This was Yule, he told herself. This man had killed the captor, and he has done her work for her. Kayana bit her tongue until it drew blood. "See," he said, "I was out here this morning when I heard her a-screaming." He was breathing hard as he got up to her now. His face was wreathed in sweat and exertion. He didn't look like he could hurt a fly. "I went to my truck and I got old Bessie here," he nodded down to his shooting iron, "and went right back up there and tried the door. It was open, Kayana." "Yes," she swallowed dryly. "He has a habit of that." He laughed and continued. "Whew, it's hard on a old man. Anyway, I went inside and I found him hitting on Brandy over there. That's her name, you know, Brandy, the little actress that was kidnapped." "I know," said Kayana quietly, "but she's all right now." He looked at Brandy again, and Kayana saw his muscles tighten in his neck. "Yule?" asked Kayana softly. Her tears were streams drying on her face. "Yes, child," he said, still breathing hard. He turned to her, and his smile was genuine. He looked at her, and there was real love in his eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, and pulled the trigger. There was a terrific explosion, and Kaina's jacket exploded in the old man's face. He was aware of a jolt and a sharp whiteness in his stomach. He grunted and fell against the ground. His eyes were open, and his face contorted along the wrinkles of his face. He winced and rolled over on the dirty snow. "Why, child?" he croaked as he tried to look up at her. "Because," said Kaina, "I can't take any chances, Yule. You said that when you were going to meet death you were going to shake his hand." Yule nodded and tried to smile. Only a wince could he manage now. Kaina walked up to him and pulled the gun out of the remains of her jacket. "I think he's here, Yule," she said softly, and aimed the gun at his head. She pulled that trigger again, and like before, a crystalline deafness penetrated her hearing for just a second. Then she was covered with a nasty wetness that came up through the flash in front of her. When she looked down again, she saw where she had removed the top of his face. From his nose down he still existed, but from there up was visceral waste. A dead man, thought Kaina very calmly. That's what they look like. The man that still looked like Yul Brynner. Kaina turned and heard loud sirens wafting up from somewhere in the distance. "We could use you over here," she thought. "We could use you right now." "Hi, Brandy," said Kaina, looking at the girl. The gunshots had driven her down against the snow, and she was moaning incoherently. She looked up at Kaina, and her mouth was full of frothing spittle. Kaina stood her up and held her tightly. "We are going to have to survive this, Brandy," she said to the trembling ear in front of her mouth. "If we don't, it will kill us." Brandy looked at her, and slowly she wiped her mouth. After a moment she smiled and sniffed. "Kaina," she said, "take me home." About that time, from out of nowhere, there were park rangers, a blazer from the JCSO, and an unmarked unit from the same department. The two Ranger 4x4s came out of the woods above them. The blazer whipped around from the back of the trailer, and the unmarked came up the road that led to the trailer. They all got there at almost exactly the same second. Kaina and Brandy stood close, staring at all this manpower. Deep within Kaina's mind, she wondered, was a man finally going to try and do them some good? It was a question she would never be able to answer. "Kaina," said a man's voice over the bullhorn, "drop your gun." Realizing she still had the gun tightly between her fingers, she tossed it over towards Yule, who was about 5 yards from them. It landed on his leg and bounced harmlessly off him into the snow. Policemen converged on her and snatched Brandy away from her as though she was an abused puppy. Brandy looked at the cop and shivered as he took her away to the squad car. "Brandy's going with us, Kaina," said a familiar voice behind her. It was Detective Reginald's. "We'd like you to accompany her if you would." "Thanks, Detective," she said finally, getting it right this time, "but I don't think you could keep me away." She smiled at him and added, "Do you?" He patted her on the shoulder and noticed that her nose was bleeding just a little bit. He brought out a handkerchief to give it to her, and as they walked towards the unmarked cruiser, he said, "No, Kaina, I don't think I could stop you, and I really would not want to try." Epilogue. The phone was ringing. "Crap," said Echo, spinning around and spilling her nail polish. "Echo," yelled Kaina. "Phone." "Coming," she yelled back. Kaina almost never answered the phone any more. It was never for her. "Hello?" "Echo," asked Kelly. "Is Kaina there?" "Hi, Kelly. Yeah. How are things in Oregon?" "Fine. Let me talk to her a minute." "Sure, let me get her for you." Echo went into the living room, ready to holler out to Kaina that her mom was on the phone, when she stopped. Brandy Manson was giving a press conference on television. "I want to say that I wouldn't be here were it not for Kaina Shea Erbichem. She's my hero and the wind beneath my wings. I don't want any of you to forget that. She gave me life when I had none. She's my reason to live. She really is the hero here, and I don't even see her present. You want to talk to someone? Talk to her. She's more of a woman than I'll ever be. You all really do not deserve the sacrifice she made for you, and you will never know just how much she did." With that, she left the podium. "Wow," said Echo, before she realized that Kaina was crying. Echo went back into the phone and very slowly picked it up. "Kelly," said Echo, "she can't come to the phone right now. I'll have her call you back." The end.